Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome on in here to our user group webinar. My name is Jim. I'm coming to you live on an overcast day here in Columbus, Ohio. Thanks so much for joining me here, everybody. We're going to be spending the next 20 or so minutes talking about correcting transactions in the donations module using the transaction browser in donations. We'll discuss finding a gift there, making a correction to it. Also, if you ever need to reverse a gift on that screen, we'll be discussing that as well. So before we go ahead and get started on that, a quick word about your GoToWebinar control panel that everybody should have on your screen. You should be looking at a small red arrow, usually in the upper left-hand corner of that control panel, that will allow you to either minimize or maximize that screen. You minimize it to give yourself a little bit more room on your monitor to see what we're talking about here today. You maximize that to get access to the different features in there, probably most importantly, the questions section there. As I go through my presentation here for the next 15 or 20 minutes or so here, if you have questions about the topic at hand, feel free to type that in there. I may not get to it while I'm going through the presentation itself, but I will certainly leave the room open after the presentation is over and get to any questions on this topic that you have. Oh, and the other thing is, if you have our regional training manuals, we're going from the Donations 104 book, the D104 book, and we'll be covering topics from pages 16 to pages 22 in that book. So that's the documentation that we're going with here today. So let's go ahead and get started. We're here running in version 21.18.2, which is our current version of Church Windows. And we're going to go ahead and open up the donations module. From our opening donations portal window here, on the donations tab in the upper left-hand corner, there's a button directly below it that says Browse, and that's going to take us into our Browse Donations window. It's going to default to the donations year that you're in right now. So if you look in the upper left-hand corner of that screen, it'll show you the date ranges of the gifts that you're looking at. In this case, January 1st, 2018 through December 31st, 2018. The grid that you are looking at down below shows all of the gifts currently that have not been reversed during that time period that you have posted here in donations. Couple of quick notes about kind of the way that this screen is formatted. You're going to see along the top of the screen a series of column headers. So here is these boxes up at the top here. Here's a box for transaction number. Here's a box for account. And the one that's right next to that you'll see, which is donation date. You'll see this small arrow button listed inside of that box. I don't know if you can see it on the presentation very well here, but it'll say donation date, and you'll see that small arrow. It's right there on the screen. That tells us that the grid that we are looking at is sorted by donation date. You'll also notice you're not seeing a whole heck of a lot of them on your screen now. That's because of this box, which you see up above, this giver box that's listed up here. When you see a box up here, that means you are grouped by that field. So in this case, it is giver. And what grouping means is that you'll see all of these folks. There's Lucy Page with a little plus and minus next to her name that you can expand or contract there to show all of the gifts. So that's just the way to tell kind of how the grid is formatted here. This is the default view. If I wanted to change kind of the way this was grouped, I could do that easily. I can grab this giver box, you move it down onto the headings on the grid here, and you drop it there, and now it's not grouped by anything, and now you're just seeing all the gifts in your entire database by donation date, sorted by donation date. So you can group by whatever you want to. I'm going to go ahead and put it back by taking this giver box, dragging it up, and leaving it there. Okay, so just a quick note about how to navigate the views on this screen. Okay, so the other way that you're going to be able to quite quickly locate particular gifts that you're looking for on this grid is by using the giver search box that is in the upper left-hand corner of the screen right here. It'll say type to search. There's a small checkbox there for inactive folks. So by default, it is going to show people who are marked as inactive, either in the membership or the donations module. If you uncheck that box, you will not see any inactive givers on this grid. But if you want to find a particular giver, you click in that box below that. Now you can search by either giver number, if you are using giver numbers in donations, or by name. So I'm looking for Peggy Morris. I'm going to go ahead and type the last name Morris in here. We see we have several records here in our on our browser here that meet that criteria, but I'm going to go ahead and select Peggy by you can either just point your mouse at it and click, or you can use your arrow keys on your keyboard. And when you select that record, go ahead and press enter, and it takes you to that record. So what you're looking at now is a list of all of the gifts that Peggy has in the 2018 year. Okay, so if there is a gift that needs a correction on this screen, and that correction could be any number of things. It could be a gift posted to the wrong giving account. It could be the date is incorrect. It could be the amount is incorrect, or any number of other things. You can use this window to adjust those. So let's go ahead and take this $800 check to the general fund. Let's say that that check was not intended for the general fund, but it was actually, when she gave it, she intended that to go towards the building fund. So what you can do is you can select that gift by clicking on it, highlights it in blue on your screen, and then up at the top of your window, you'll use the green check mark button up here that says correct, this button right here. Okay, so when you use that, it opens up a second window that says correct donation in the upper left-hand corner, and you can make changes to anything that you need to on this gift. All of this is editable on this window. If I wanted to change the date of the gift, I could simply click here under donation date and make that adjustment. I could change the giver that posted that to us. I can select any other giver. But as I said, in this particular case, and again, like I also mentioned, you could change the amount if you wanted to on this window as well. But in this particular case, for this example, let's go ahead and say that instead of this gift going to the general fund, she meant that to go to the building fund. So you'll see over to the right of that, there's a little drop-down arrow. You can click on that, and it'll show you a list of all of your giving accounts that you have available. And you can make that change simply by selecting the building fund. Just clicking on that doesn't make the change happen. You need to actually save that change, and there's a couple of buttons down here at the bottom. There is a save donation button right here. This one is to save that change here in donations only. So if you are running also the accounting module in Church Windows, you would most commonly click the Save and Transfer button, which is the one right next to it, which saves that change here in donations and then allows you to make that transfer over into the accounting module right afterwards. You would use only Save Donation, which is the first button, if you are only using the donations module, or if the change that you're making here in donations wouldn't make any difference over in the accounting module. For example, if you were changing the giver for a gift, the accounting module doesn't care who gave it, just the amount of the gift and the date that it was, posted. That also and where it's going in terms of which income account or where you're depositing the money. But in this case, it's going to be changing a building fund, which may change how this affects income over in the accounting module. So we're going to want to go ahead and click Save and Transfer here. So it gives us this message here. Your corrections require that the transaction be reversed and re-entered, and there's a new transaction number 2204 here. When you click OK on that, because I clicked Transfer Donations to Accounting, it takes me to this window here. Under normal circumstances, you will see that gift listed right here where you'll click your transfer button. We are not seeing that in this case. Bear with me for a moment. Oh, our training data here is not set up to do transfers from donations over to accounting. Well, just understand that if you are doing transfers over to accounting, that you will have that opportunity to click your post button here under the transfer column, move that money over into accounting. Okay, so normally that's how that would end up looking. Now that we've posted that, if we're looking at our screen here, the original gift that we corrected is listed right here. There's our $800 check. You'll see it's now posted to the building fund as we see here under the account column, and we see the new transaction number 2204. There's a checkbox down here in the lower left-hand corner for showing reversed transactions right here. So if you click that, if that is unchecked the way it is here, this is only showing us the active transactions right here. If we click Include Reverse Transactions, you may see some things show up listed in red here, which are prior reversals and prior corrections that happened on here. So our original gift to the general fund is this one right here, transaction 2146. It was an $800 check, as you see listed here, to the general fund. And then you'll see transaction 2203 listed right below it for minus $800. It's a correcting transaction. So there's no way to simply delete a gift here from the donations module. We do keep an audit trail for every correction that is made here, just to make sure everything is on the up and up, and everything that is recorded in the system has a trail to it. We know all the everything that's been done. Okay, so that is correcting an existing transaction. Also, sometimes an individual gift will need to be reversed. There are a couple of different situations for that. A common one is if there's a non-sufficient funds check that you received that the bank returned it to you for non-sufficient funds. We'll look at that in just a moment. But other transactions, if something was posted twice, like if it's a duplicate transaction, something like that, other entry errors here in donation, sometimes you just want to reverse it and get rid of it entirely. So let's go ahead and say, for the sake of argument, that this $500 check here to the general fund needs to be, it's actually a $1,000 check for the Save the Animals drive and for the general fund, because you see it's one transaction number, 2200, here under the transaction number column, and they both also have the same check number if you're looking in the check number column over here on the right. You don't have to select both of these. You just select one of these lines, and then you'll use up at the top here where it says Reverse and NSF, this button with the little red stop sign right here. When we click on this, it takes us to this window, Reverse Donation. There are a couple of different options on here. The recommended way in which you do this is the one that is selected right here on the opening tab, that you reverse it as of the date of the original transaction. This basically makes it so that the gift was never in your system to begin with. It's all the way back to the date of 3/11. It is as if that if you run any reports after that date, it is as if that gift was never posted into the system. You do have options for very specific circumstances if you go to the Advanced Options tab here, where you can leave that gift in the system until a later date, which means that if you run a report in the interim period of time between when it was originally posted and later when it was reversed, that transaction will show up in the system. Very specific circumstances, you're not going to use that very often. You're usually going to want to use this date occurred from original transaction. You can post a comment for it down below here, whatever is appropriate for this. And this is also the window where if it is an NSF check, as you see here, there's a checkbox for that right here. Now that is just going to be a checkbox that you can search for reporting purposes. So if you wanted to go see if you have any NSF checks that have been reversed, you can go find those with that. So from here, if you want to make the change and then transfer it over into the accounting module, you would use the OK and transfer button here. If you only want to post it here in donations, you would use this OK button right here. And that only posts it here in donations and does not transfer it over into accounting. And in the case of non-sufficient funds checks, NSF checks, we do recommend that you only post it here in donations and then over in accounting, adjust your books, your books over there as is appropriate with a journal entry transaction over there. There are additional things that you may want to do over in accounting in terms of bank fees and some other things like that. NSF checks can sometimes have some other line items that need to be taken care of over in accounting in that case. So that's what that checkbox is there to denote non-sufficient funds. So once you're all set here, you click OK. It'll ask you if you want to permanently reverse that particular donation. When you click yes, it'll tell you that it has been reversed and also that there is a correcting transaction that you will see, which when I have my include reverse transactions checkbox checked in the lower left-hand corner, you're now going to see the original gift. Again, it's 2 lines because it's a single check that was broken up between 2 different giving accounts. And you'll see the reversing transactions below it. In the donation comments, you'll see that I typed in duplicate entry below that. All right. That is everything I have for you guys here today. I'd like to thank you guys so much for joining me today. If you're all set to get on with your day, feel free to go ahead and click the X in the upper right-hand corner of your GoToWebinar control panel. And for everybody who's getting out of here now, thanks for joining me. But as I said earlier, I will leave the room open a little bit if you have any specific questions for me. Okay, so Christine is asking why we're not transferring over to accounting. This is where I need to tell you that I'm not an accountant myself. So some of the vagaries of sort of the things that need done over in the accounting module are a little bit beyond me. The idea, I think, when we're saying an NSF should not be transferred over into accounting is that it is a very common situation with church windows to have one person who is here in the donations module who is handling all of the giving and things along those lines, and that you have somebody else who acts as your treasurer over in the accounting module. And they may know some of the things that need to be done with that gift over in accounting that you may not. So the idea here is you reverse it here in donations and you tell the treasurer, who's responsible for the accounting module, kind of what happened for them to kind of do what needs done over there. It's not, that specific part of this is not really in the outline of the webinar here today. So if you have questions about it, feel free to go ahead and give us a call into our support line, which is at 800-533-5227. We'll be glad to answer any questions that you have on that topic there. Merry Christmas to you as well, Elizabeth. Okay, I'll just leave the room open for another minute or two, see if anybody has any further questions here today. Okay, David's asking why the opening screen opens one space below the top. I'm going to assume you mean the Browse Donations window. Let's see if I can see what you're talking about. Opening screen. Right, right. In this case, it is probably, it's due to the fact that we're sorting by giver here, but that might be something I want to let the developers review here. I did not notice it does that. I don't think it's supposed to. I'll let the programmers know it's doing it. Yeah, I think the screen is basically opening to show the first gift on the grid, but it's not smart enough to allow another space for the grouping line, in this case, the grouping by giver. I'm guessing that if we group by something else like donation date, for example, I don't know if it'll save that though. Oh, it didn't save it. Oh, well. Yeah, it's not supposed to. You're not missing any transaction. It's just grouping by the giver there. I had never noticed that. Thank you for pointing it out. Yeah, I think we're going to be good here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar for everybody. Anybody who's still hanging around, thank you so much for joining me here today. I hope you have a good rest of your afternoon. I hope your holiday season is going well. I hope you have a Merry Christmas, and we'll talk to you on down the line. Thanks, everybody.